Netherlands for St. Martin, Sabre, and Statia amounts to some $702 million. The highest pledge after that came from the European community, and that was $352 million to be shared between Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, where most of the pledges, if not all, basically went to. So it is very difficult to explain when one country opened the purse the way that the Netherlands did, that we have issues with that. And that is why I would advise, we should be able to multitask. We should be able to, and this goes again for both sides, we should be able to deal with one issue, deal with our feelings and legal objections as to the procedure that was used, and at the same time continue with the recovery. But now we got into one procedure, and because of its this or that, it would seem like everything has stopped. And thankfully, as I said, with the meeting with the State Secretary, we were able to sit and discuss these matters, and we agreed that first thing that we would need to start to do is to tone down the rhetoric. It is not nice, and I'm sure my colleagues sitting here at the table, including the others are all honorable people. So it is nice. It is not nice every day when you come to work that you have to hear about those crooks on St. Martin, those bunch of thieves in government, etc., etc. It's not nice. And on the other side, the taxpayers in Holland won't understand if from their money so many millions is being given to us and we don't appreciate it. When it comes to the people that we say we are doing this for, they don't understand what we are fighting for and why we are fighting and not assisting in getting things moving. And that is exactly what the State Secretary and I said that would have priority. We would tone down the rhetoric. We would work with each other based on a mutual respect and move forward with the things that we have to do. And fully realizing that my stay here is limited to maybe another 2 weeks, but I can assure that those 2 weeks would be based on that approach, on that procedure, that we would deal with all of our partners based on a situation of mutual respect, and we expect the same type of respect that we give and that we move forward with the process. I hope with that I would have, as an intro, given a brief explanation as to how I attend and my colleagues on the ministry, how we attend to move forward. You already heard from the different ministers. The issues that they address are the pending issues, and we are moving forward, and we're going to work and do the things that we are here to do. Elections, as you know, elections were written out. There's a schedule that by law that has to be followed. That schedule would continue. The next date on the list for something to happen would be December the 6th, which would be the closing of the voters register. That would be on that date. And all further preparations for the election was continue according to law. There has been also some issues at the post office. Could have read it in a newspaper. The post office for many years have been in a very bad situation as far as the finances are concerned. Work was being done in trying to find a solution for that. However, we reached the stage, or they reached the stage where now, end of November, there were no monies available to pay the employees. While the situation is a labor issue that had the initial attention of the Minister of Labor, Minister Lee, nothing really could be done in that area unless we really deal with the acute financial situation. And therefore, I met with the union, the management, and the board of the PSS. And in that meeting, solely at first concentrating, as I did not have the time and the, to peruse all of the documents to see exactly where we stood, but the situation of the workers will not be able to be paid right after such a devastating hurricane. While they were expecting to be paid, it was one that was not acceptable. I brought the matter to the Council of Ministers yesterday, and the Council of Ministers approved to give an injection to pay the salaries of the PSS workers for November and December. We are already in December. They asked for November, but realizing that this problem is not going to be solved before the December payroll, that we would also take December into it. But at the same time, that we have to look for solutions. And we have to be realistic when looking for solutions. The PSS in its present form cannot survive. We all know that. Post offices all over the world are going belly up. We have a legal obligation to have a post office, and there were a number of options that were already on the table. One of the senior staffers of the Ministry of General Affairs is presently in Curacao, or even today, to further discuss one of those options. And the idea is there too also to get moving. I promised the Council of Ministers that we are not just going to say, okay, we give you money for the November and December and move on, leave it up to the other guys who coming in. Like I said, if it's 2 more weeks we have, we're going to work hard those 2 weeks to try to see what we can do to solve the problem. So that is being dealt with. I'm going to change hats for a moment because I'm still the Minister of Justice, the one that I really like. We have prepared and also discussed the extension of the assistance that we're getting from the National Police of the Netherlands. It is expected that as we now prepare to open for the tourist season, I think next week the first ships are coming in, people out of work, we expect things can get a little rough where those things are concerned. And we need to be able to guarantee the safety and security of the population and the visitors to the country. So our request has been prepared to ask for an extension of the stay of a number of the national police officers from Holland as part of the recovery program of the police also. I believe that in the pre-discussions that this request will be well received and will be granted. And in order to do, and by doing that, we would be well on our way and can reach out to the business folks, the merchants, and other business people that while we cannot guarantee that each and every robbery or whatever that we will be able to stop, there's no society that can guarantee that, but definitely we would make sure that the necessary protection is there, and that St. Martin residents and visitors and business community would have a feeling of safety and security while conducting their business and going about their business. Also, the police will be finalizing, because we are talking a lot about the assistance that we get, but if we do not ourselves recruit police officers, when that assistant goes back, then we fall back right in the hole where we were. At the beginning of my term, I announced that we had approved for this year to hire 20 police officers, 10 recruits that will hire locally, and 10 experienced police officers from abroad for a limited period. That process, at least with the 10 experienced officers, has been finalized, and those contracts would be signed off. And the recruitment is in process for the local officers. The situation at the prison is moving very, very good, I must say. We are way ahead in the discussions as to how we are going to finalize the prison. Basically, all parties on the ground have agreed that the only solution would be a new prison, a new facility. And we are now looking at the drawings that were already there and have been updated to suit this the present times, and a prison that would meet all of the international conditions put on us that a prison should have. There too, it would be very important, because you could have a new state-of-the-art building, but if you don't have people to work in that building, then you still have an issue. So we will be also looking at that total plan. And last but not least, the coming week, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday, His Royal Highness, His Majesty King Willem Alexander and Queen Maxima would be visiting St. Martin. They will be here for that Saturday, and they would be visiting different areas and on the island, and different organizations would have the opportunity to explain their projects and what they are doing to the royal couple. Having said that, again, I would like to end for all of us, no matter how tough these past few weeks have been. Let us move forward on a positive note. Let us move forward in rebuilding this country. It doesn't matter, and State Secretary Knops have said it, it should not matter who is in government. It should matter that we get the job done to get St. Martin back up and running, and that is important, and that is where we will be finalizing our term working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Bosman. We now move over to the question and answer segment of the briefing, and we start with Mr. Andrew Dick of the Daily Herald.
Prime Minister Bosman, concerning the prison, do you have a ballpark figure as to how much it would cost for a new prison? And also, how much money was transferred or will be transferred to the post office?
We are still finalizing the financial part of the prison, but we are looking at an amount with everything on board and all of the equipment that's in it. We are looking at an amount between $50 to $60 million. Okay, and the amount that transferred, the amount is to meet the payroll. I just yesterday we didn't have the document with the exact figure. For the post office. Let me see. We are looking at the net salaries are 80,000, about 81,000 guilders per month. That's to cover the net salaries for the 2 months.
Thank you. Mr. Lyndon Brown of BCN News.
Good morning, Prime Minister and Minister of Justice. You were in New York for a special meeting with the United Nations, and you are concerned that St. Martin is not part of CARICOM. They are losing a lot. Well, presently now you are the Prime Minister. Would you see that happen, that St. Martin can be a part of CARICOM so that they can, of course, get a benefit that other countries are getting during hurricane and natural disaster?
Yeah. While in New York, we met with different leaders of organizations, and a brief talk also with Ambassador LaRoque, the Secretary General of CARICOM. And that issue was mentioned about our request for associate membership. And the ambassador assured that it would not be long anymore before a decision would be made on that. And in discussions with other Caribbean leaders, CARICOM members, the plight has been made to look at the process that is still pending with our request and to speed that up. So like I said, I'm looking at maybe 2 more weeks in office, but what I can do within that 2 weeks, having started in New York, I will do, but I cannot promise that within the 2 weeks that it will be done. But definitely we should, look, it's not just a matter for financial institutions, et cetera, et cetera. We had this hurricane, for instance, and our airport got damaged. When our airport got damaged, it affected Anguilla. It affected St. Kitts to an extent. It affected St. Bart's. The role that the French side, the role that St. Martin played within the Caribbean is not just, you know, that we are located in the Caribbean. So I believe that we should reevaluate the criteria that we use to determine whether or not, for instance, a country should work together with issues. The hurricane, for instance, did not make a distinction whether a country was rich or poor. It did not make a distinction whether a country is an independent country or an autonomous country or a dependent. The hurricane hit us all right? And the effect that it had on one also spilled over to others. The cruise tourism, they don't only come to St. Martin. They don't only go to the BVI. They sell a Caribbean package. Okay? And if part of that Caribbean is out, like the reasons why, for instance, the cruise did not come to St. Martin in November, it's because of the package that they sold was not readily available. Okay? So when we take all of those things into consideration, I think we should be more pragmatic, more practical when we sit down discussing how we should work together.
Thank you. Mr. Dick?
Minister Jacobs, concerning the financing, study financing, how much was allocated for this year?
That information I don't have. Allocated for what? The studying in the region?
Yes.
That's usually an amount of 300,000 every year. That number hasn't changed.
Okay.
So we're usually able to give like in an amount of between 25 to 30, depending on what level of study students who did not necessarily get qualified via the old or the regular system, the study financing, and that's why it's a little later and it's processed quicker that they can start in January.
Mr. Brown?
Question to Minister Lee. Day by day, a number of persons, people have been visiting the government building for voucher. Do you have a number of how much people receive vouchers and how long this process will continue.
Thank you. I mentioned in my statement that so far we have roughly 1,800 applications. We're taking in probably close to 100 a day. And our estimates, keep in mind, we still haven't processed all of those, so it's just an approximate number, but about 70% of those applications are being granted. So 70% of 1,800. But now we're going to the phase 2, where we're going out into the communities to get the applications filled out by community leaders. That will also give the staff here more time to process applications, because many of them are busy with the intake process. So this will free up some resources for them to be able to process the applications that they have backlogged. The program, you know, we have an initial budget that was approved by council ministers of 1.5 million guilders. So based on our intake process, we'll see what the numbers are and how quickly the money is going out. But in the end, the program will be determined more by the amount of funds that we have available to give versus the time. The original time frame for the project approved by council of ministers was 2 months from the time we commenced handing out the vouchers. So we'll see how the money balances out against that 2-month period. I think it's also good to keep in mind that this basic necessities voucher was always intended to be a temporary program, right? We started first with the physical distribution of relief goods. So that means literally handing, you know, food and water out of trucks and things like that, right? So physical distribution, and also food going to soup kitchens, for example, right? So the next phase, this phase, is a more accountable, a more targeted, a more selective process. But really the idea is that people who need help, if they need structural help, they come in and they're requesting financial aid. And of course, we're seeing our requests for financial aid go up. But again, there's a process to that application and approval process. So, you know, this is really as a temporary measure to make sure that we try and alleviate some of the hardships in the community. So it was never intended to be an permanent program. Thank you.
In the interest of time, we will allow one more round of questioning. If reporters have additional questions, we encourage them to reach out to the minister's offices to get those answered. So, Mr. Dick, your last question.
Minister Lee, the festival village, the temporary shelter situation, can we get an update as to if all the persons left the Little League ballpark yet and moved into the festival village? And also, we've been getting reports that the ministry or someone from the social affairs went and picked up food from the festival village, a week's supply of food that was donated by the Rotary for some reason. So they were quite upset about that yesterday. And I wasn't getting you on the phone, so I decided to ask you here.
The Little League facilities and Festival Village are continued to be in use. I think the numbers are roughly the same as what I mentioned last time, if I remember, was 57, 58, something like that. I think those numbers are fairly stable. And the issue is that we need some form of emergency housing to move the people from those facilities. And I believe there is a deadline for the use of Festival Village. I think it was extended, I'm not sure, but there is a deadline for that. So there is a time constraint, but you know, the issue is how we're going to handle the emergency housing, and that actually falls under the Ministry of Romy. But again, I mean, this is a collective issue. This is a government issue that we need to figure out how we're working on the emergency housing, and that's something that needs to be done. Regarding what you're speaking about, that somebody went and picked up food yesterday, this is not something that I've heard of. As a matter of fact, I was there just yesterday, and there's a small kitchen inside the Festival Village, and actually nobody mentioned anything to me about anybody picking up anything. So it's the first I'm hearing about it. So if you have more details after the meeting, please let me know, and I'll certainly investigate. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, your final question.
Okay, Prime Minister Bosman, there's a lot of emphasis on the police, manpower, work, work, work. The police have family just as anybody, okay? And the Prime Minister has said that their houses have torn down by the hurricane. Is there an organization giving some consultation, lecturing to the police to help them? Because I have some affiliation with them. They are also going through tremendous stress.
Yeah, that is true, and that is why in almost every press briefing, and not just for doing its sake, but sincerely meaning it, I've applauded the police in how they perform and are hanging up. And that is why it is important for us to continue with the assistance, because that also, imagine if we did not have others assisting us, then it would be really a chaotic situation. And these people would not have even the time to worry about their damaged homes or their family situation, etc. So it is important. Besides that, yes, about the stressful thing, we have, as a matter of fact, on a part-time basis, during the morning hours, there's a psychologist stationed based for the police, especially for the police, and a psychologist specializing in behavioral therapy, and in the afternoon hours that person works, and as a matter of fact is deputizing as head at the MLC, Miss Lally Center, at the Miss Lally Center, and so it is being addressed. It is a very important point that we take very seriously, the stress level. And it is not only with the police. As I mentioned when I was speaking, it is throughout the community in general. So we all need to be a bit vigilant, with some patience. If someone stops in front of you in a car, immediately don't start shouting, you don't know what stress people are under right now. That is part of the process of recovery and rebuilding that we tend not to take much into account. We worry about the roofs, the buildings, etc., but there's also a lot of damage to people, to human, and they too need dealing with.